Hey everyone, today I want to review the Betckey iLabel Thermal Printer. I was lucky enough to have Betckey reach out to me about a week or so ago, and they offered to send me a thermal printer or one of their thermal printers for free if I would review it. And here we are. So I've had a few people reach out to me and email me, a handful. I'm not saying people email me every day for things like this, although I wish they did. But no, I've had a handful of people email me to ask me to promote different things. And I've turned them all down until I heard from Betckey because I think a big gap in the tools I recommend is a less expensive thermal printer. Because I bought a Rollo a couple of years ago, and since it hasn't broken down or anything, I haven't had any need to buy another one. So the only thermal printer that I've been able to recommend is a wireless Rollo, which is almost $300. So I was really happy that they emailed me, and I think it is a win-win because I wasn't going to spend money to buy another thermal printer when I had a perfectly fine one working, but it's great that they sent me this one for free so I could review it for you all and see if this is a more budget-friendly option that you can use instead of a Rollo. But I think I'm going to compare it to the Rollo, even though the Rollo is almost 4 times the price of this Betckey thermal printer. But I think it gives it a good run for its money. Let's get into it. This is the iLabel 4x6 thermal shipping label printer, and it is the printer behind me right here. This is the one they sent me, and spoiler alert, but I'm going to plan to use it going forward, so it's going to be my daily driver now. But it has a few different features that make it unique, even compared to the Rollo. And it is lacking a couple of features too. So one major feature that it is lacking, it does not. So I have a Mac, and it only works wired in to Mac. The reason I originally bought the Rollo was because it works over Wi-Fi, and that was a big selling point for me at the time. But now that we're in a house and I have my own office and I'm not printing shipping labels out of our bedroom, I have pretty much everything hardwired in. So this was not a deal breaker for me, but you do need to know that if you have a Mac, you're going to have to wire it in. But if you do have Windows, or I believe you can also print from your phone and use Bluetooth wirelessly. But Mac is only wired, so that is the one drawback when it comes to Rollo. And I will say too, I think the build quality on Rollo is a little bit better. When I got this one, it didn't feel quite as premium as the Rollo felt. The Rollo has a nice kind of glossy finish. You can tell it's really well manufactured. And this one just didn't have that same feel when I got it. But it makes sense because it's, again, almost 4 times as cheap. So I wouldn't expect them to be able to manufacture something of that quality at this price point. On to the pros, which it does have. I was surprised at the things it can do that a Rollo cannot. So one major selling point of this is that it can print labels up to 1 inch small, which they say it's about the only thermal printer that can print labels that size. A lot of other sellers may not care about that at all, but I think that's a huge deal for postcard sellers because I know I use the 1 inch labels for every single postcard. I did buy them on eBay, and I still have, I think I have up to, I think I'm covered at least like through the end of the year as far as inventory labels go. But if you don't currently have a place to get inventory labels or want to print them yourself, I'm going to start printing mine myself with this thermal printer and going to save a good bit of money doing that. And I think if you use inventory labels, it's a great feature that it can print up to 1 inch small. And I did ask them some detailed questions about that. You can create templates to print in Word, and you can export from Excel to Word. So essentially what you're going to have to do when you create inventory labels is go into Excel or Google Sheets and just make all the labels that you want and then export them to the template in Microsoft Word, and then you can print from there. So I'm not gonna try to do it myself until I have to, but it seems like a pretty straightforward process, and you don't have to like type in all the numbers manually or anything, and you can print as many labels as you can fit on a roll. If you get like a roll of 1,000 inventory labels, you could print all 1,000 of those at a time, from my understanding of their software. But again, I haven't printed those smaller labels myself yet. One other benefit to this, and this is a minor benefit, but it is something I noticed just coming from the Rollo. The plugs on the back of this are offset a little bit. So when I bought the tray, the Rollo brand tray to put the rolls of thermal label paper in, and it interferes with the plugs on the back of the Rollo, which I thought was dumb because they're the ones who designed the thermal printer. So you figure they could either design the tray or the thermal printer so it wouldn't interfere with the plugs. So that was just annoying dealing with that on the Rollo the past few years. And this one, I was thankful to see that the plugs on the back, both the USB port and the power port, are both all the way off to the side, so you have room to feed the labels in without the plugs interfering with the little tray. As you can see, I have, it's a little hard to see, but they sent me a tray or a label feeder and the printer. So those cords do not interfere with it. Another pro is that, or I guess this is just a pro of, or it would be a pro of any printer compared to the Rollo, but for some reason, my Rollo has an issue with wired connections and it drops the connection after about 30 minutes. So that means if I print something in the morning and then need to print something again in the afternoon, I have to restart my printer and wait a couple minutes for it to boot back up, which is, yeah, just a minor inconvenience and obviously wasn't something that I was willing to buy an entirely new printer to solve, but it is nice with this one. It doesn't appear, it hasn't lost connection yet. I haven't tested it for weeks or months yet, but it has not lost connection yet, and I am hopeful that it will not lose connection. That's another pro. I did notice, and I don't know if this is just because my Rollo is getting older, and the inks aren't as vivid, but I noticed printing labels from the Betckey iLabel that the blacks were much blacker and it was just darker colors, which doesn't, it can matter if it's too light, then maybe the post office or whoever wouldn't be able to scan it. I never had that problem with my Rollo, but I did notice right out of the box that the labels were darker than Rollo and they had a higher contrast. And I will give you a few tips for setting it up. I can't tell you how to set it up with Bluetooth because I just print off of my computer and that is only compatible with USB. So it may be different with Bluetooth, but as far as setting it up with Mac, it was really plug and play. From plugging it in to having it printing labels was only about 5 minutes. So if you're intimidated about the difficulty of setting up a thermal printer, this one's super easy to set up. And I just downloaded they sent me a little USB drive with what I guess is the firmware for it, but I just downloaded it from their website and didn't open up the USB drive. But yeah, you can just get the software directly from their website. I'll put a link to that support page it's like the setup page with a video guides and the firmware and a test label below. But this is this is the roll. So I wanted to show you the sample label because there is a little, I wouldn't even call it, I guess, a catch. I don't know. No, a caveat. It's not really a catch because it doesn't really matter. But when I first started printing, something that did throw me for a loop was it was first set to 4.083 by 6.25 inches, which is just slightly off from 4x6, which is the label size I use. So I was like, and I printed one at this size, and it actually printed two labels because the labels that I have are only 6 inches long. So it printed 6 inches of it on one and 0.25 inches of it on the other. And I thought, that's going to be terrible if I can't change that. And then I looked, and I saw there was no 4x6 size. So I was like, what is going on? Like, how did they overlook that you can't even print 4x6? And I realized that they just measure it in millimeters. So it's 102 by 152. And if you notice when I change to that, the size of it changes ever so slightly. So keep an eye on it and you can see how it changes and adds extra padding on the side and at the bottom. But what you're going to set it to is 102 by 152 to print labels on eBay. And pretty much everywhere that prints shipping labels uses 4x6 now. So instead of it being in inches, it's just 102 by 152. And that's just a little thing you need to know. My software that I use, I just print directly from the browser. This is a Chromium browser. So if you're using Google Chrome or any browser that's built on Chrome, it'll look the same as my browser does right now. But it remembers what size paper you set. So you really only have to set this one time, and then you're good to go. But that's really the only hang up I had between plugging it in and printing labels. But yeah, I printed the sample one a few different times just to make sure it looked good and got everything lined up right. One thing I will say too, it has, like most thermal printers, it has a guide in the back, and you can, with like the scanners you have where it has guides for the paper, so you can set that wider if you're printing on wider paper, or set it smaller if you're printing on smaller paper. One thing I would say to make sure you do the first time you set it up is to make sure those guidelines are on the edges of your paper, because if the guidelines or if the guardrails are bigger and your paper is on one side of them, then it will not print perfectly center. I had that issue when I first printed mine, because so the labels are 4 inches wide and the guides were set to maybe 4.5 inches wide, and my paper was on one side of the guardrail, so all of my labels were slightly off center. But when I printed the test labels, I corrected that and just centered it. So that's really all you need to do to set it up. It's very easy to set up. It's plug and play. At first I used, when I started reselling, I used a regular printer to print labels. So I used 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, and each sheet of paper would have two 4x6 labels on it. I do not recommend doing it that way because it's very inefficient. It prints very slowly. It uses toner or ink, which these do not. They print thermally, so you don't ever have to worry about replacing the ink or anything like that. So I highly recommend getting a thermal printer. I have recommended the Rollo in the past, but I would say now to get the Betckey thermal printer. I haven't had any problems printing with it. I haven't used it for an extended period of time. Obviously, they just sent it to me within the last week, but I will keep you updated if I have any issues with it. But yeah, I don't think it's not the premium quality that the Rollo is, but I don't think that really affects the printing quality. I think it more so is cosmetic. The cosmetic build quality isn't quite to the level of the Rollo, but I don't think that should really matter because you're not buying a thermal printer to look pretty, you're buying it to print labels. And this one's done a great job for me. It's really plug and play. This is a great investment for any reseller, and if you can swing it, I would suggest buying this one. And I did. So this is the Rollo 2. I was going to show that just to show you how expensive it was, which I saw the Rollo recommended on a bunch of different reselling forums, and it is, you can see right there, it looks pretty premium cosmetically. It just has a nice design, and this one is not. I'll go back to it. It looks similar. There's only so many ways you can design a thermal printer, but it doesn't look like the same premium quality cosmetically as the Rollo. But that's really the only con I have against it compared to the Rollo. And the pros definitely outweigh the cons. The biggest pro, I think, is the price. The Rollo, $280. This, only $80 MSRP. But if you do buy it, they have some codes here for spending $150, but you can use my code, MailZM10, but it's just MLSM10 to get 10% off. So that'll knock it down to $72, which you're not really going to beat that for a nice thermal printer. I think there are some on Amazon that are in the $50 to $60 range. So if you're really pinching pennies, you could try out one of those, but I have not reviewed any of those, so I can't vouch for any of those. But this one is a great printer. And yeah, if you're in need of a thermal printer, if you have one that works, obviously you don't need to upgrade. It's more of a one-time purchase, hopefully. But yeah, this is great. I did want to say too, I'd been using their labels for years before they ever even emailed me. That's why when they emailed me, I was like, huh, Betckey, I've heard of that before. And then I looked over, and right on the shelf over there is a box of Betckey thermal labels. So I'd been buying their labels for years. I just didn't know that they also made a thermal printer. And maybe if I did, I would have started with that one instead of the Rollo. But it all worked out in the end because I got this thermal printer for free. And it should go without saying, but this video is brought to you by Betckey. I would not be making this video if they did not send me their thermal printer for free. But like I said, I've had a few different companies reach out to me to want me to make sponsored videos. I wish it was more. I've only had a handful so far, but this is the only one that I've said yes to so far because it seemed like such an obvious thing to review. But I would also be willing to do reviews for scanners. So if Epson had a new scanner they wanted me to do a review for, I would do a sponsored video for that. But I really only want to do reviews for stuff that are postcard reselling adjacent and that you're going to use every day and that actually makes sense and that I actually believe in. I don't want to do reviews for products that are that you don't really need or that are junky. But this is a great thermal printer. This video has probably been going on for too long. Thank you again to Betckey for sponsoring this video and for sending me, I guess, I don't know if they really, they sent me the thing for free. They didn't pay me to do the video. They just sent me the thing for free, which I guess is sponsoring it. But yeah, that's all I had to say about the Betckey thermal printer. If you don't have a thermal printer, highly recommend getting it. Use my code MLSM10 to get 10% off. I use their labels. They're really cheap and I mean they work well. Any thermal labels I think are going to be about the same. So I just get the cheapest ones I could find, which happen to be the Betckey ones, and I've had really good luck using them. Let me know if you have any questions about it, if you get their printer and have any issues with it. As I said several times in the video, I think, for me it was really plug and play. All I had to do is plug it into the wall, plug it into my computer, download the firmware, which I will. I'll just go to that page right now. Let's see. Betckey.com/setup. So I'll put this link in the description too, but this is where you download the firmware for it. So for me, since I'm on Mac, I just downloaded the Mac driver. It installed it in 30 seconds, really lightweight, but you can download it also for Windows or Chromebook. And it does work with Bluetooth, I believe, on here. They'll tell me. Let's see. Yeah, it works with Bluetooth on Android and Windows. And yeah, this is their app, I believe, for iOS or Android. For Chromebook, I think it works with Bluetooth. But they have a video here where I'm sure they'll explain that. But yeah, Mac is, I believe, the only one that doesn't work over Bluetooth, unfortunately. Unfortunately for some. I like hardwiring everything in now that I'm on a hardwiring spree. Got my internet hardwired, my scanner hardwired, my thermal printer hardwired, so we're all good to go. But yeah, I wouldn't do this video if it wasn't a product that I liked and a product that I believed in. And I'm gonna use this printer myself as my daily label printer. If that ever changes, I'll let you guys know, but I don't think it seems to be a good quality printer, but I'll let you know if that changes. Thank you for watching this video. I will put all of the affiliate links and the discount codes in the description. So if you are in the market for a thermal printer, use that code to get 10% off. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I've talked way longer than I should have about this thermal printer, but I think it's worth it because the only one I was recommending before was the Rollo, which is super, super expensive. I'm happy I got this one and was able to do this video and hopefully give you a much cheaper option for your reselling career. I don't know how to end this video, but thank you so much for watching and have a good one.